Hey everyone, Harry here to talk about today in New York versus Trump, where I again had the privilege of attending the actual trial in the courtroom, and I really kind of won the lottery today. You file in after going through different security checkpoints. So there's really no way to game the system. And I just fell plunk into the end seat in the first row of reporters with a real look at the defendant and the jury. And so I thought it was, a really special kind of perch. So let me give you my overall thoughts about it. I'm sure you've been deluged with it on the news. So Pecker finishes in the afternoon, and that is obviously the centerpiece of the week. I judged him a really effective witness for the prosecution. And the thing about him was, he's a total sleazy guy professionally, who was just an open book about it. He just, it was very persuasive that maybe because they put the fear of God in him a few years ago, or he, made this deal and he knows he has to stay with it to stay out of trouble. He was, I thought, quite clearly telling the truth. And the truth is, really inculpatory for Trump. So they, the big thing of the week, we had known about Karen McDougal, or maybe even, the doorman. But the DA started it in this whole, meeting that Trump had summoned with Pecker and Michael Cohen. And it was clear that there was a through line leading to Stormy Daniels that was all about protecting Trump's electoral fortunes and the campaign. And just detail after detail came out making that clear. We learned, for example, and it makes sense, this would have been a super valuable story for the Enquirer to run, right? The mistress of the president. But they didn't do it because they were only about things that were helpful to Trump or harmful to his opponents. All kinds of sleazy things came out. They got Tiger Woods in a compromising parking lot photograph, and they wanted him to do a cover. They, on a different magazine. So they just said, Tiger, it's not your day. Here's this picture. And Arnold Schwarzenegger, when he ran for president, 20 victims came out of the woodwork, and they, paid them all off to help him the same way. And I think the defense thought it might even be useful to make it seem like, oh, this is just par for the course, but it's par for a very corrupt, sleazy course. And, there was just very little doubt about what had happened and why it had happened. And he was an open book. Now the cross-examination, I thought was interesting as a trial lawyer, because the guy was technically sound, his overall rhythm and the pace of the questions and always leading, but it didn't really achieve much in terms of substance. It didn't really make holes in, Pecker still seemed honest, and he tried to imply sometimes that Pecker's memory was bad, but Pecker actually showed him up a few times, or he showed up on redirect. No, where the defense attorneys implied you were lying there, look at page 10, you absolutely weren't, right? And there were a few times where Trump's attorney looked as if he'd been squirrely. And just in general, the redirect was, what the cross should have been. The cross's flaw, though technically solid, was it just took too long, and it didn't have a narrative flow. It just tried to poke various holes, and the prosecution was really able to patch them up after. So Pecker leaves the stand in the Friday afternoon in a very successful, having done his task, mainly because in a jocular, affable way. He just said, basically, yeah, I'm a scoundrel. And he didn't seem abashed about it. He was just very straightforward. Okay, that left him not too much time in the afternoon. And the next person they called was Rhona Graff, who is Trump's longtime personal assistant until he went to government as president. She's worked for like 34 years. She must know it all, right? I mean, she's really been around him. And I think she is still quite loyal to him. And the DA, interestingly, concluded, I don't think we're going to get too much from her. And so they didn't try. Rather, they used her in a way that's necessary to authenticate, as the lawyers say, to make usable all the calendar entries and the phone numbers. But then they did put into evidence and the contacts for both Karen McDougal and just Stormy, with the cell phone number. And an appointment, they were able to show that Stormy had been up in his office in 2015. In fact, she vaguely remembered it and remembered that that Stormy Daniels was, I think she put it, an adult entertainment. What she then said on Cry. You mean porn star? Yes, I guess I mean porn star. The defense was trying to suggest that maybe Stormy Daniels was there because Trump was interested in having her as a competitor or contestant on Celebrity Apprentice. Her testimony overall was short, and it ended with their asking her about what kind of boss he was, and her, saying very nice things about him as a boss, and occasional acts of graciousness and the like. And then she got up to leave the stand, and Trump, who, by the way, this is one of the things that you get when you're there, had spent much of the morning nodding off and even, taking a nap or two, a bona fide nap, stood up and went to embrace her. Very improper thing to do in front of a jury. And the guards kind of held him back. She had a broad smile. It's obvious, why the DA concluded we're not going to get anything from her and we're not going to try. And the guy who was on the stand as they left is I think a slightly complicated witness. He's there completely. Well, he's got a subpoena, but he's there voluntarily. He's telling the truth. But he's the guy who's talking about Michael Cohen's transaction in his own bank account, using in part his own funds, gets a home equity loan to pay Stormy Daniels the $130,000. And I think they're going to try to suggest this is all Michael Cohen acting on his own. I think it's a fanciful argument that won't fly. David Pecker, in a pretty good moment, said Michael Cohen couldn't pay for lunch without Trump's approval. And they always have Michael Cohen calling him the boss and things like that. So, the notion that he's doing it on his own would not fly, I think. And indeed, there's going to be some email traffic and stuff that shows he's partially doing it from the Trump organization email and the like. But there'll be some indicia, because remember, they were camouflaging it, that, it's a sort of a personal a transaction based on a loan in home equity. And they're going to, DA now will finish and go through and give the reason why, even from the transactions point of view, you can see that he's acting in Trump's behest. And then, of course, there's a wealth of other evidence that that's exactly what he's doing. And I think it won't be very credible to argue otherwise. It's a problem for the Trump lawyers because, they have to basically try to back the boss on all his wild stories over the years. So, didn't have a relationship with Stormy Daniels. And I think maybe they'll say that about McDougal as well. All kinds of things that the jury's not going to buy, and it adds up. Whereas if they were just zeroing in on, the criminal conduct and trying to distance him from that, it would make it more credible. Instead, they're taking on things that are going to taken on water that could, sink their ship otherwise. Lots of, well, I'll tell you, the jury, I looked at them often. They were pretty attentive, more attentive in the redirect than the cross of Pecker, but not as attentive as they were yesterday, in my estimation. Maybe getting a little tired at the end of the week. Finally, though, I'll bet they are really primed to see Michael Cohen and find out about him. Even the prosecution is kind of suggesting he's the bankers say that he got him as a client. He was assigned to him because he was considered good. The banker was at challenging clients, which Cohen was. They had Pecker say that he thought Cohen was prone to exaggeration. So that's out of the DA's side of things, trying to sort of front the idea that he's, a bit of a strong personality. And then the defense, well, it's obviously their main strategy, I think, will be to totally dirty him up. But their problem is that one of the DA's main strategies is to show corroborating evidence, and that's a lot of what Cohen will testify. So a lot of what Pecker did. There'll be a lot of paper about it, and we know now Hope Hicks as well. That came through Pecker's testimony that she's at this meeting or that meeting. So, I think they'll try to get him on and off the stand quickly, but but the defense will have a very long, and vicious, go at him. And, already in just asking David Pecker about Michael Cohen, they don't call him Michael Cohen. They just call him Cohen, with third grade kind of contempt. Okay. So that's the week. Centerpiece is Pecker, and they really did a good job at using him to kind of lay down the tracks through McDougal into what Stormy Daniels is going to be, which is, in the wake of the crisis of Access Hollywood, an attempt to, shore him up politically. And when exactly, I think they will call Stormy. I'm not sure about Karen McDougal, who comes across as a pretty complicated figure. I'm not sure it gives them that much. Hope Hicks ought to be quite a witness. And, we'll see. We'll reconvene next week when, among other things, we'll also have the hearing on Thursday about the contempt and motion to show cause. The judge today signed the motion, so Trump has to show cause why he shouldn't be held in contempt, and that'll take place on Thursday. And, we'll see if he adds to the list of 10 or so violations of the gag order that the DA already is pressing, or whether, as seemed the case, at least in court, he is basically brought to heel and more or less a very different Donald Trump than the country knows, a kind of compliant, meek Donald Trump. That's at least who we've seen in court this last week. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.